I feel like we are color coordinating today, like inadvertently.
I had no idea. Like, this is literally like, I've just been having a weird day. And I
Oh,
was like,
tell me about your weird day.
oh no, I think I sent you a message, just emotional hormonal
You're
stuff.
having
I'm
a
sure every woman can relate.
uneven hormone day.
Yes.
That's
And I was like, you know what
to
I
be
need?
expected.
To not take a shower.
Hey, I mean, I feel like when we're not feeling, I don't know if not feeling ourselves is maybe we're really feeling
We're
ourselves.
feeling
like
ourselves the most.
feeling ourselves the most, then it's like good to just do the things that feel right, even if they don't make sense.
Yeah.
I like to escape to a shower. Like I like maybe it's because it's the only place I can be alone in my house, you know? So I feel like I mean literally I don't think there's any other place in my house that I can be guaranteed to be alone except for the shower. And even then, like Chris will
Chris
poke his
is
head
like,
in,
hey.
just like talking to me about stuff, and I'm like, this is my fucking time. That'll be an interest. Actually, that'll be something we can get into later as we continue to watch Girls, because I remember very distinctly a scene just like that. Anyway, welcome to the Adam and Andy podcast, listeners. I'm one of your hosts, Nicole.
I'm your other host, Sarah.
And on this show, we are going through the entire filmographies and TVographies. I think we're in a TVography kind of place right now of our two favorite actors, Adam Driver and Andy Samberg. And if you think that pairing goes together, it doesn't go together, I want you to like take a step back and think about how much it in fact does go together. It's like, you know, I don't know, what are some good I'm thinking of opposites attract, you know? Like I feel like what do you think Andy and Adam would be like in a movie together? I feel like the closest we got is when Andy acknowledged that he had seen the Burberry commercial. You know, it would be like sweet and spicy. You know what I mean?
I think it would have to be a serious rom-com. You know what I mean by
serious rom-com?
You know what I mean by serious rom-com? I mean like
not really. Can you give me an example?
Like like Girls.
Okay, yeah. I guess
Girls
if you think about it, Girls is a bit of a rom-com.
Substantial. Girls has some meat to it, but it's also funny and
I guess I've
has
never
romance.
thought about it being a rom-com. But I guess it could be one of the categories. Yeah, I mean, relationships are a big part of it. Coming of age comes to mind. But yeah, that's interesting. I never thought about it like that.
They could be in like a girls type thing.
I'd love for
like both of them.
I'd love for Adam to return to and Andy to return to a series, just because selfishly I'd like to have them every week. I also love with television. What I appreciate about television is the way that actors get to really explore a character, and you get to watch that character change and evolve. And I think that Adam Sackler, who is the character we're talking about today, listeners, is someone who really does change and evolve in a big way during the show. You know?
I don't remember.
You don't remember?
It's been a long time.
Wow. Okay. Well, then I guess you'll be like re-experiencing it. I definitely recall him making some. I mean, he never like stopped being like Adam Sackler. He always was that guy, but like he definitely like if I look at him in this first episode and think about like kind of the journey he goes through, it's pretty substantial. Anyways, so listeners, we're going to be talking about Girls today, the pilot specifically. We're now entering our Girls rewatch era. And so we're going to be watching not the whole first season, but all the episodes that Adam is in. And that's not because I don't like the series Girls. I know there are people out there who don't like it. I actually have watched this show a couple of times. Would I've rewatched it as much were it not for Adam Driver? Probably not. But just because there's so many other things to watch. But I do think it's a really good show, and I think the writing is really excellent, and I'm happy to talk about all that when we get to it. And I know you've got some stuff you want to talk about regarding like how your feelings about the show have changed since you saw it the first time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, I'm looking forward to looking at it through the our eyes that we have now, having watched so
Mm-hmm.
much of his filmography.
Mm-hmm.
But before we get into that, would you like to get into some Adam and Andy news?
Sure.
Okay, so do you want to start with Adam or Andy?
Andy.
Okay, so Andy, the big news is that we are getting really close to the premiere of the Chippendale Rescue Rangers. So that's the next big Andy thing. It is coming out on May 20th on Disney Plus. A new trailer dropped yesterday. I don't know if you've seen the new trailer.
Mm-mm.
No. I'll talk about that more in a minute. And there is going to be a Chippendales premiere in Los Angeles on May 18th, so we may catch a glimpse of Andy in some kind of I assume, in some kind of red carpet setting, promoting Chippendale Rescue Rangers, and maybe even some interviews. I would think promoting the film. So I think we're going to be getting a little bit of Andy content. I hope soon, with the release of this film. I did watch the trailer, and I think I got a better sense for what the film is about. I don't think we got a good sense of that. It sounds like they are getting together to investigate some kind of string of cartoon disappearances. I don't know if murder is the right way to describe it. It seems like they're investigating a crime, which includes popular recognizable cartoon characters being like disappearing, like they've been abducted.
Abducted or
Hmm.
murdered?
Well, abducted. I guess they haven't found the bodies yet. At
Oh,
least that was my impression from the
the bodies
trailer.
of
The
the cartoon
bodies,
characters. Can
yeah.
you imagine?
I mean, it was giving me big Roger Rabbit vibes. You've
Mm-hmm.
seen Who Framed Roger Rabbit, right?
Yeah.
So that was like a movie about cartoon characters, but like cartoon characters like you haven't seen them, with like a darker edge.
Mm-hmm.
So it definitely feels to me inspired by um Roger Rabbit, maybe even a little like Ralph Bakshi kind of animation, like that kind of edgy. Here's what I'll say. Like, I'm intrigued. I'd love for you to watch it, and maybe next time we can talk about it and see what you think about the trailer. By then, we'll be getting pretty close to the movie, but I'd be really interested to hear your thoughts on the new trailer. I don't feel like we need to watch it right now per se. But I would be interested in your thoughts. I think the thing for me is I'm still like confused about who this movie is for, you know?
Yeah, it's like too sophisticated for kids, but it's too dumb for adults. Is that what you're saying?
It's more like it looks like a children's movie, but it doesn't feel like a children's movie.
Mm-hmm.
So then is it for people who watched it and are nostalgic for Chippendale but are now adults?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it like, Roger Rabbit was, I feel like, meant for adults,
Mm-hmm.
but I saw it as a kid and really liked it. So is that what they're going for? Something that appeals to both, maybe?
I have no idea.
I'm
I
just
was confused
unsure.
about it the first trailer I saw. I thought that it seemed very juvenile in tone,
Hmm.
but the material seemed like kids wouldn't really get it or enjoy it as much.
Sure. And I think sometimes if you have enough, people getting tagged in the nuts and fart jokes, like kids will enjoy it no matter what. And
Mhm.
what I'm concerned about is like, cartoons being murdered or disappearing. Like, is that something that is going to be a little much for kids? Not my kids, because my kids are into some weird, creepy shit, you
They
know?
are.
But the average kid, is
Mhm.
that going to be too much for them? I don't know. I'm unsure about who the audience for this film is, and I don't know if that's going to be a good thing for them or not. Disney Plus, the platform, seems to be killing it right now. So I guess, they're, probably just the fact that it's a new on Disney Plus might be a benefit for them. I don't know. I would love for you I'd love to talk to you about it once you see the trailer, because I feel like I got a better sense of the movie, but no better sense of like the audience for this movie. You know,
Mhm.
is this something you think we should we watch this for the show?
I think so.
You think? It seems like we
Mhm.
should. All right,
Yeah.
listeners. Feel free to weigh in. You know, tweet at us at AdamAndyPod if you think we should watch Chippendale Rescue Rangers. But it seems like Sarah and I might break our, I mean, Andy does a lot of voice work. So maybe we should be honoring some of this voice work by watching this. And you like John Mulaney.
Oh, I love John Mulaney.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, all right. So we'll watch Chippendale and we'll give it a shot. So that'll be in on May 20th is when that's going to be released. Okay, moving on to Adam. So a couple things. Arts in the Armed Forces is going to be doing a reading of the play True West on May 14th. And I believe that I know where it's going to be. Okay, so it's going to be at Fort Wadsworth at in Staten Island. So not too far from where Adam lives. So I think we might see Adam again. Of course, that is an event for Arts in the Armed Forces. It is not like open to the public. It's open. It's for veterans, but
Mhm.
nonetheless, pictures tend to appear uh, promoting Arts in the Armed Forces with him at the event, or people will share photos if they were at the event. So we may see Adam pop up in a couple weeks for that. Let's see. Filming on Michael Mann's Ferrari movie is now going to begin in July. So July is when the filming for that begins. And Adam's castmate, Ariana Greenblatt, tweeted the numbers, like an image of the number 65 and the caption April 14th, 2023. So what do you think about that?
I think
Does she know when this movie is being released?
I
Maybe?
think we're I think by the time it's released, everyone will have forgotten why it was made, and
Hmm.
they I don't know, I'm just kind of like, you can't postpone
I
a
mean, you
movie
can.
for, like, 3 years. I
Avatar
mean,
is coming out in December, and that movie was supposed to be coming out like a decade ago,
oh god. Oh
right?
god.
I was pregnant with Charlotte, my 11-year-old, when the first Avatar movie came out. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't disagree with you, but I do think, first of all, Adam's draw, like Adam has a huge fan base, and the
Mhm.
draw for him, I don't think that's going to die down anytime soon. But also, you and I were not really like as entrenched in the fandom during this time, but as I was reminded through Twitter, Annette was the same way. Annette was
Mhm.
shot, and that thing was held on to for years before they released it.
How many years?
I think it was supposed to be released in 2020. And so it was
Mm.
at least a year, maybe a little over a year delayed. Maybe it was supposed to, I believe it was supposed to be released in 2020. And then because of the pandemic, they held on to it until 2021. And that
Mhm.
didn't come out until what? July, August of
Mhm.
2021.
Mhm.
So it's about a year and a half. Um, so so you're saying your interest in 65 is waning?
Oh, no, no,
No?
not mine.
The
I
common
guess
public, though.
I guess the common public wouldn't even know that it was made. So when it comes out, it's like, "Oh, it's new," you
Ooh, a
know?
new Adam movie. Yeah. I will say also that apparently Sony released a trailer for some upcoming film projects. I'm not sure where this happened. Listeners, feel free to provide us with this information. It was maybe at a con or some kind of investor meeting. But anyway, tweeted us at Adam Anypod if you know where this footage was released. But they did release a trailer of upcoming projects that included some footage from the movie 65. So it's out there. They're sort of promoting it.
Does it have dinosaurs?
And the no one, all people said about it was saw footage from 65. I'm intrigued. They did not specify what was
Hmm,
in the footage, but a
okay.
couple people tweeted about seeing it. And then everyone on the internet was promptly like, okay, where's the trailer? Like, give me a trailer. I'm ready. You owe me a trailer at least.
You owe me.
I don't expect them to release a trailer until closer to the movie. I mean, this
No,
isn't
not
like,
until like
yeah,
February or something of 2023.
yeah. I mean, this is not Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness we're talking about here.
When was the
Um,
trailer release for that one?
Good question. Actually, I think they didn't release the first trailer until February, and the show's coming out in May. So even for Doctor Strange, you got to wait. So,
Yeah, May 4th. We looked it up yesterday. We'll be on our trip when it's released, so maybe
oh,
we'll get to see it. I don't know.
I'm gonna have to get a babysitter. I gotta go see that shit.
We watched Doctor Strange last week just so we could
Yeah,
prepare.
yeah.
Mhm.
Um, I feel like you have. I think Spider-Man: No Way Home is like that's like you got to watch that to prepare. Also,
We
did you
did.
watch WandaVision or Loki or any of that stuff?
I watched
Okay, so
Loki.
you watched Loki. Okay, I think WandaVision is probably a big one if that would help you because I think Wanda's story is going to figure heavily into this movie, and all of that is told in WandaVision, which is a
I
great show,
wonder
by the way.
I wonder why they have films that like where you have to watch so much content to understand the next thing. Like that doesn't
Hmm.
seem like a smart thing for them to do. I mean it might work, but it just seems like
Well, number
I feel
one.
like you have to watch all the Avengers movies. You have to
Hmm.
like I haven't seen any of the event of Avengers mo- mo- movies yet.
Well, you've seen Doctor Strange.
Yeah, but I mean, I haven't seen any like Avengers that are
Oh, I
like,
see.
you know.
Right, right, right. I think, and listeners, we're getting a little off topic here, but we'll circle
Sorry.
back. We'll circle back. I think this is relevant to us a bit. I mean, Adam was in a big franchise. You may have heard of it called Star Wars.
Hmm.
I think that the goal is for people to get more out of watching all this other stuff, but that you hopefully you can still watch the movie and enjoy it without it. I just think you would get a lot more from the emotional journey if you had seen Wanda's story.
Hmm.
Why do I think they're spreading all this out? Because entertainment is not exclusive to film anymore, and they want people to subscribe to Disney Plus. And you can tell the story in a deeper way in a episodic format than you can in just a movie. You know, I feel like
Hmm.
I've gotten spoiled on television. Like these episodic shows can get into the story in a way that a film can just like can really just capture a small moment in time in that character's life
Hmm.
or scratch the surface or kick off something. Like a
Hmm.
film in 2 hours cannot explore a journey in the depth that like a 8 or 9 episode television show can, or even 6 episodes. So, and I don't read Marvel comics, but I do know to circle back to Adam and Star Wars. I do know that if you kind of want to know everything that's going on in Star Wars, you kind of need to have seen the movies, you have to have seen the shows, and there's a lot of comic books that are continuing the narrative in comic books and novels. And you don't have to have read the novels to know what's going on, but it definitely gives you additional information and context. Like the biggest example I can think of is that if you watched the sequel trilogy but never read the Rise of Kylo Ren series of comics, there's a huge part of Ben Solo's journey that you're missing that is not in the films. And we talked about that on the show, but it really I think changes your point of view about the events if you have knowledge of how he got to the place where he is. So to answer your question, I think people are hungry for more content. I think that creators are wanting to explore the story in different ways, but also from a financial standpoint, the more content you have and the more ways to reach people, the more money you can make. You know? Anyway, this is to say that if you have a chance to watch WandaVision, it's a really good show, and I think you would enjoy it. And I think it would give a lot of added context to what's going to happen in the Doctor Strange movie. Shall we talk about girls?
Yes.
Okay, listeners, I think both of us have been really excited to tackle this show. Partly because this was a show that you and I watched together. Even though we watched it separately, we also watched it together.
Mhm.
And I think that this is definitely the show that made us, fall in love with Adam Driver, the actor, you know?
Mhm.
So it's like coming home, to a dirty, smelly gremlin. That's what it's like. Okay, gosh. Where would you like to start? Do you want to start? I know last night you were really eager because you and I saw each other last night. You were eager to talk about like what it was like watching the show for you again.
Mhm.
Would you like to talk about that? I'd love to talk about that.
Yeah, I guess we could start with what it was like for me to watch it the first
Mhm.
time.
Oh yeah. Oh, I want to talk about
Um,
that too. Yes.
yeah. So it was 2012. I was in college, I
Mhm.
guess.
This
Still in
is
college.
before we knew each other, right? Because didn't we meet
Yes.
in 2013?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
So I my parents were still supporting me, and I
Mhm.
wrote a lot in my free time.
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
was still in school and didn't have a job, but
Mhm. And you
um
had gone back to school, so
I
you
went
weren't
back to
like
school. Yeah, I
you were
wasn't
like in your
like
mid-20s, right?
yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
you're
So
around the
I was
age
their
of these
age.
characters, yeah.
Yes. I'm actually the same age as Lena, I believe. Let
Mhm.
me just check real quick. How
She
old
says
is
in the
she?
she says in the pilot that she's 24. At least the character Hannah is 24.
That sounds
And I
about
think I
right.
think Adam was closer to 27, 28 when this show came out. So he was a little older.
Okay, so she's 2 years older than me.
Mhm.
But I was about I was like 24 at that time.
Mhm.
2012,
So just right
24
in there,
exactly.
right in
Yeah.
there. Yeah.
And the very first scene, the talk between the mom and dad and her,
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
thought the writing was so good and I
Mhm.
like related to it so much. And
Mhm.
I was like, this is like nothing I've seen before. And like,
Mhm.
cause no one this age is a star
Mhm.
in a show. Like, no one
Mhm.
at this time in their life has ever had their story being told in this way.
At
And that
least not
was
a woman and
that
not
was
on
in
a
right.
CW show
And
or
this was in
something, yeah.
2012. So like
Yeah.
this was still like 9 years ago, I think.
Mhm. Well, the 10-year
And
anniversary just
oh,
literally just
10 years.
passed, yeah.
Okay. No, 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 never mind 10. Um, and I just really latched onto it. I think uh, by the time it got to the scene between, and we can talk more about the scene, but
Mhm.
like the
Yeah,
scene
we'll to
between
get to that when we get there, yeah.
Adam and
Hannah.
Hannah, right?
Mhm.
Um, I thought that he reminded me of my first boyfriend who was
Mhm.
very my first boyfriend was mean.
Yeah.
My second boyfriend was like very uh I guess stiff and very like hollow.
So
Um
unemotional, like closed off
Unemotional,
emotionally?
closed off.
Yeah.
So I had a very negative view of a, a Adam Sackler. I kind of
Mhm.
likened him to these
He was
bad exes.
he was triggering for you.
He was.
Yeah.
And I'm just gonna skip ahead to now.
Mhm.
Um,
Wait, can I talk about
oh
what
yeah,
it
sure.
was like when I watched okay. So, very different place in my life when I saw this, okay? So, I was in my early 30s, I think maybe approaching my mid-30s, and I was super pregnant when I first saw the show. I was actually, like I was pregnant with Lucas, it was my second child, it wasn't my first child. So I was already married. I had gone through this whole quarter life crisis or whatever you call it, where you're, like just out of college and trying to figure out what to do with yourself. I had already gone to grad school. I had moved to Chicago and come back. I had like what I would consider to be a grown up job. I was working well, at that time I was teaching at the I was teaching film editing at the Art Institute of Atlanta. And before that, I had a job at a post house. Um, so I was looking for something to watch at night because I was very pregnant and very exhausted in the evening. And I just wanted to sit in my bed and watch something. And so at that time, Girls was, I think, wrapping up or like halfway through the first season. And so I was able to binge like the first half, I think, while before waiting for other episodes to come out. And so by the time I saw the show, I was like past that point in my life and kind of like looking in on it, like one might observe a fish tank or something where you're observing the marine life in a fish tank. And so I'm looking at it from the outside, but also remembering what it was like to be that age. Like I was close enough to it that I was like, okay, I remember. Now, my parents didn't really support me once I graduated. Like I had some support in school, but I always worked. I always had a job. And I once I was out of school, I didn't really there was like one time where I would like needed money. I was transitioning into grad school and my loans hadn't come through yet or something, and my mom gave me some money then just cuz I couldn't pay rent. But at that point, I was in my 20s, I had a job. I wasn't really supported by my parents, but I do very clearly remember that crisis of who am I? What should I do? How do I get my art out there? How do I legitimize myself as an artist? How do I find my voice as an artist? Like all of those things were things that I really identified with, as well as like trying to navigate relationships and navigating relationships with your female friends, and just kind of trying to become a person, an adult person, transitioning from that where I think in college you're still like something about you is still childlike because you're like still moving through a system where your life is very you're told what to do in college. There's a plan. You go to this class, you've turned this thing in. You're still having other adults kind of guide you through your life. And then school is over and now your life is unstructured and it's all up to you. And that can be very shocking, I think, for people, a shock to the system. And again, I acknowledge that we're both coming from a place of privilege where we have where we had that, where we ended college, we had a support system, and we're not fighting for our lives in the way that some people are who don't have that privilege, right?
Mm-hmm.
My crisis was more existential, although certainly money was a huge problem for me in my 20s. I was constantly broke trying to figure out how to get more money. But so I was not close to it in the sense that I felt like they were telling my story, but it was something I could relate to. I actually found myself a lot of the time relating to, and I still do, Hannah's parents. Like I was finding myself, especially this time now that my children aren't Hannah's age, but as they're getting older, I relate more and more to Hannah's parents. And so that's kind of where I was when I was watching it. I remember watching it, and as far as Adam goes, Adam Sackler, I remember thinking like, who the fuck is this guy? I was like, I can't
Me
stop looking
too.
at him. I was like, Chris walked in, my husband Chris, who hasn't listened to this podcast and never will listen to any podcast that we do. He walked in while I was watching it one time, and he watched it for a few minutes, and I think it was a scene with Adam Sackler, and he was like, what is this? And I was like, it's Girls and it's about this. And he's like, do you like this show? And I was like, I don't know. I was like, I don't know if I like it. I don't know if I like it. I don't know if I like these people, but I can't stop watching it. And
Mm-hmm.
that's how I felt about Adam at first. I was like, I can't say that I like this guy. I can't say that I don't like him. I'm inexplicably drawn to him, and I don't really
Mm-hmm.
know why. Like, I feel like I
I felt
never
the
would.
same way.
I was like, I feel like I would never want a relationship with someone like this, and yet I cannot stop looking at him. He's
Yeah.
so magnetic.
Yeah. I remember thinking like that he looked very odd, but somehow attractive. Like I just
Mm-hmm.
remember thinking like he looks so odd and yet
Mm-hmm.
why am I attracted to him? Like,
Yeah.
you know, um
And
and
it
the way he
doesn't hurt
behaved
that
was
he's
like,
shirtless for the first like 10
yeah.
episodes of the show.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we'll get into I want to get into his behavior when we get into that scene, but yeah, so that's kind of where I was at when I was watching this. Super pregnant, just like laying in my bed watching Girls, trying to decide like, do I like the show? That's kind of where I was at in 2012. So, and now you wanted to talk about what it was like watching this time.
Yeah. It was like, so I've had, or I am in the best relationship of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, with a partner who is both very attractive to me, but also very sweet.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
And
Attentive.
so attentive, yes. So
Mhm,
I found myself seeing the sexy or good aspects of
mhm,
Adam, like
mhm,
picking the little kernels of like that's
mhm,
cute or
mhm,
that's a little weird, but it's like, or
mhm,
and definitely moments where it's like, ew, like
mhm, mhm,
no.
mhm.
But I felt myself not being like triggered about my past relationships, but more like he's not he has more layers, I guess.
Yeah, I
There's more
agree.
to him than
Yeah,
just being
a fuck boy.
a fuck boy. Like there's just
Mhm.
more there.
Yeah, and I feel like, and, I don't wanna get too off the rails talking about Lena Dunham and her persona. I feel like we've done that in
Mhm.
another episode,
Yeah.
guys, if you wanna go back and listen to whatever the fuck episode that was. What I will say is I don't personally have the hate or vitriol for Lena Dunham that I think there other people do. And if you don't like her, if you really don't like her, if she just like if you can't stand her, that's certainly up to you. And I don't have anything to say about that or any. I have no need to defend that. You people can feel about her however they want. I do think that the comedy, at least for the character of Hannah, is in her selfishness
Mhm.
and her lack of self awareness. And that's
Mhm.
funny to me because I
Mhm.
remember I'm at a place in my life where I can remember being selfish and
Mhm.
not self aware and
Mhm.
fucking up a lot of stuff because I made poor decisions based on what I thought was my read on the situation and how off base I was, right?
Mhm.
and and I really was the center of my own universe for a really, really, really long time. I still, in some ways, am. I think having, and again, I don't think you have to have children to grow past that, but I think for me, having children certainly aided in my in knocking me off of the
Self-awareness.
center. Yeah, it gave me more empathy.
Mhm.
Like I didn't have a lot of empathy.
You're very empathetic now. And
Yes,
I met you after you had kids,
yeah.
so
And I'm
yeah.
not saying I could never empathize with people, but I definitely gained empathy the older I got. And I think that in a lot of ways, Hannah lacks that empathy and maybe
Mhm.
one day would develop it. Maybe at what having her kid, and we can talk more about that when we get to that part. Um, yeah, and I agree. When watching Adam Sackler this time, I picked up on some things. uh I don't know where I was going with Lena Dunham. We'll get back to that. I guess that is to say, I think the show is really well written. I enjoy watching it, and not just for Adam Driver. So that's what I'll just say about that. Um, and as far as his performance goes, I definitely see so many layers in there. Like I remember thinking like that basically he's a fuck boy, right?
Mhm.
The first time I watched it. And the more I watch it, the more I see the little things that where that character does have layers and does
Mhm.
have
That's so funny that we both thought
sensitivity
the
and
same
kindness.
thing.
Yeah, that's in there, and maybe he's covering it up with this
Mhm.
other behavior, like maybe he doesn't know how to properly express himself in a way that feels
Mhm.
healthy,
Yeah.
with regard to being tender. There's so many little tender moments in that
Mhm.
really strange sex scene. Like there's like so many tender moments. And I feel like and I want to talk more about that when we just like talk about that scene. I know we're just dancing around it, listeners, but we'll get
Yeah.
to it. Um I want to. Feel like that again. I think the writing of this show is excellent, and I think that the writing for that character got better and better the more the staff and Lena got to know Adam, the actor. But I do think a lot of Adam Sackler's layers initially, like I think he was written as a fuckboy, and I think Adam Driver came in and
He
gave
just
this
brought more
guy
to it.
depth, which is
Mhm.
that is like his superpower. That's what he does in
Mhm.
every role. He
Yeah.
takes somebody who should be unlikable and gives them layers, and you
Do you
want to peel
th
back up those layers.
do you think that Adam Driver was ever a fuckboy before he met his wife?
Good question. I don't know. He seems like a weirdo. He seems like he was a weirdo, and that again, not a lot is known about I think, and listeners, feel free to weigh in on this at Adam Andy Pod. My understanding is that people who knew him when he was in high school or college say that he is closer to the Adam Sackler character. At least he was in that time in his
Really?
life, meaning that he's kind of strange and like in the sense that he does unexpected things and says unexpected things and is like kind of like a lot. He's a lot, or he was. And who knows what he's like now that he's grown up and matured. We've all changed as we grow older.
Mhm.
So that's all I know, but I don't have any definitive information about what he was like at that time.
Yeah. I mean, do you ever wonder that? Do you ever wonder, like, what men you know or what famous men there
Mm-hmm.
are, like, who used to be just a piece of shit to women
A lot of
that they
them, probably.
dated?
A lot of them, I'm gonna guess. Oh, as far as how he was when he dated, I don't know that I have any. I've never heard of any information about that. So, listeners, feel free to weigh in on that at Adam Andy Pod. I don't know anything about his dating history. Can't think of a single woman that's come out and said I went out with Adam Driver and he was like
And he
this.
was crazy. Yeah.
I
No.
think that people were just saying that he was like kind of how he had like some he was kind of a strange dude with big emotions. That's, I think,
Mm.
the indication that I got. I mean, I remember very clearly he himself going on, I think, Colbert and talking about how when he was in Juilliard, he had to do yoga. There was like a yoga class they had to do, like a movement class, and that he would get really mad because this guy kept taking his yoga mat and getting his ass sweat on it, and he would yell at that guy. And I'm like, yeah, that sounds like something Adam Sackler would do. So stuff like that.
It's funny.
Should we talk about the actual show?
Yes.
Okay. So I feel like this episode is a lot about comparing couples to me. Like that, there seems to be a central thing of seeing different pairings and then
Mhm.
seeing how those dynamics are different. That's obviously there's a whole thing about Hannah and her parents and their and them like pushing her out of the nest. That's like the
No
main
more
topic.
money.
No more money. And her dad's like, but I can't. I
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
love their. I know. I love Hannah's parents. I love their relationship. I love that we get to know them more and get to see them
Mhm.
more. And every time they try to interact with Hannah, I just feel so bad for them. Like when they're like, "Oh, we came here to visit you," and she's like, "Well, I don't want to see you. I'm busy. I have a dinner thing," and she's mad because they cut her off. But
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
it's just really funny to me. It feels relatable as a parent because obviously this is a comedy, so this is about extremes, and I'm not saying there aren't people out there like that, but as a parent, you're constantly trying to do things for your kids. You're trying to do the right thing for your kids. You're trying to, it's like, I'll give you an example. Okay, I'm gonna give you an example. My son Lucas gets obsessed with things, as you know. He got obsessed with this. He gets obsessed with video game characters, and he gets obsessed with these like plush, like stuffed animals of video game characters. And they're always these rare, weird video game characters. So it's not even like he's like, I want Super Mario. No, he wants this thing called Dread Ducky. Do you remember the Dread Ducky thing
Mhm.
over Christmas?
Yeah.
Dread Ducky is some scary looking video game duck, and he wanted this Dread Ducky plush, and he found it on eBay because he thinks that if he can Google it, it exists. And he found it on eBay, and it was like $600. And we were like, there is not there's no chance in hell that anyone is getting this plush for you. And he's like, I want it for Christmas. Santa's gonna bring it to me. And we were like, I was like, Santa is not going to get you a $600 plush, okay, buddy? You just need to lower your expectations. And so it was so important to him to get this plush. My sister found it, not the $600 one, but one that looked just like it on a different site. And so I ordered it. And I thought I was going to be like queen of the world getting him this plush. I thought he was going to see it and it was going to be like this formative memory of like, wow, my mom really came through for me and got me this plush I wanted. But it didn't look like the feet were different. Like it looked almost exactly the same, minus a few differences. It didn't look exactly like the plush he found on eBay. And to this day, he still talks about how he wishes he had gotten that plush from eBay. And every time he does it, I'm like, buddy, I'm just going to take that plush and give it to some kid that wants it. And he was like, no, 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 I want it. And I'm like, then you need to stop talking about how it's inferior to this other plush, because we tried really hard to find this for you, and it was hard to get it. And so what I'm saying is, kids who are well cared for and well loved feel fucking entitled.
Mm-hmm.
They feel fucking
It's true.
entitled. And so we are working hard as parents to give you that safety net. And when we do that, sometimes we turn you into little fucking brats.
Yeah.
So Hannah's response to her parents always makes me laugh, because I know she loves them and they love her, and I think they have a really good relationship, because obviously they've made her feel safe and secure in her life enough for her to act like a little shit. But it always makes me laugh how much she doesn't appreciate them, because it feels really true to me as a parent. Anyway.
Yeah. No, yeah, I definitely and I loved when the mom was yelling like, "I want to have a lake house. Like, I want to go to the lake."
So hilarious. And I love how her dad is like, "I'm just feeling a lot of bad feelings right now."
Yeah.
So funny. So there's that couple, there's that whole relationship. We get I think we get Marnie and Charlie. So we get a lot of Marnie and Charlie in this episode. What do you think about Marnie and Charlie?
Oh God, it upset me the first time I saw it, and it upset me this time. I know people like this, who someone loves them and they just don't care, or they're just like, this person loves me too much. I'm numb to it. I don't want their love, like,
again, it almost feels like a sense of entitlement,
Yeah.
And but on one hand, now Marnie is a tough character for me, because I've always found Marnie to be just fucking insufferable. Like, I know everyone complains about Hannah. Like, that's the one everybody complains about. But I'm like, Marnie is the one I really struggle with. But I feel like, having watched the show a couple times, the more I watch it, the more I start to sympathize with Marnie. Not because the things she does are sympathetic, but more because she's just so fucking clueless. Like, everything she does is the opposite of what will make her happy, it seems like. And that is kind of tragic. So Marnie, I understand being with somebody for a long time and meeting them when you were really young and wondering what else is out there. I kind of understand that. And if she would just be honest with him, that would, I think, be the best thing. But she's not able to do that. And she also, I mean, we haven't got this, we'll see this as the show goes on, but she also doesn't seem to be able to let him go once they do break up. So I think the whole thing is funny, where she's repulsed by him, but it's also very sad, because he clearly loves her. But also, I wonder if it's one of those things where you can feel someone pulling away from you, so you try harder to pull them back in. It's like they're both, he's trying too hard to pull her back,
and so it's
she's
making her
pushing him away. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think that their relationship is so different than Hannah and Adam's. Like, Hannah and Adam's relationship is all about sex, really. And it's all about, I mean, there's some other stuff going on there, but primarily it seems to be about these trysts, And, Marnie is very judgmental about Hannah's relationship with Adam. Like, I understand it, because she's like, this is my friend and I have ownership over this person, my friend, and I am feeling protective of them. But she says that Hannah, I think at one point she says Hannah's off having gross sex with that animal, right? Isn't that what she says? She calls him that? And so, but it's interesting, because Charlie is the opposite of that. Charlie is, he's polite, he's sweet, he's attentive, maybe too attentive. He holds her mouth guard for her in the morning and gives her a cup of coffee. It's the opposite of Adam Sackler.
It's like Marnie wants to be treated like shit, but she also looks down on
Hannah.
other people who are treated like shit. It's like, it's like she sees that and she's like, that's not what it should be, but that's
Mhm.
kind of what she subconsciously wants.
It's like she needs to chase somebody or something, which is exactly what Hannah's
Mhm.
doing with Adam, is chasing him.
Yeah.
But and later she gets a taste of that with Booth Jonathan, I think, when we get to that arc. And I don't know if she consciously wants to be treated like shit, but she's just not
No one consciously wants
right.
to be treated like shit, but
Yeah.
there are deep underlying, like, stuff from childhood with your parents that
I
make
was
you
just gonna say, Marty's
want to be
mom
treated
is
like
a
shit.
Marnie's mom is a piece of work.
I
And she's
forget. I forget about
we'll
her.
get there, but Marnie's mom is a piece of work, and I feel like Marnie's inability to let someone love her is gotta be wrapped up in the way that her mom
Mhm.
treats her. Anyway,
Mhm.
so there's Marnie and Charlie. We've got Marnie and Hannah, which I think is, when I look at the show as a whole, from the vantage point that I'm at, is the relationship that the show is about. Like, if I had to narrow it down to a couple and what is the couple journey in this whole show, it's not Hannah and Adam. Although I would have liked have had something that I felt was satisfying closure there. I don't feel like I got satisfying closure of that relationship, but it is Marnie and Hannah's relationship, and um, whether or not you think that Hanny, that's their couple name, Hanny. Whether or not you think Hanny treats each other in a way that is loving and respectful and healthy, that I think is the central relationship of the show. I don't know if you wanted to weigh in on that.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I forget the whole arc of the show.
Mhm.
It's been a few
It's okay.
years.
We can revisit that when we get deeper
Yeah.
in.
Yeah. I think that
But
I know.
the show starts with after the cold open, which is at the restaurant,
Mhm.
starts with Hannah and Marnie wrapped up in bed together, which is a shot that we see several other seasons. This is a opening shot for the next 2 seasons, but with a different
Mhm.
person in bed each time.
Mhm. So, I think that I think that's funny because I mean, this is not
Mhm.
a trivia that I'm gonna say, but
Mhm.
I noticed one of the things was, Lena based Marnie on her best friend.
Yes, yeah. Who shows up later, I think I think I think her best friend shows up as an actor
Mhm.
later on when Charlie's dating the new girl.
Mhm.
I'm pretty sure
Mhm.
that's the girl she
Yeah.
based Marnie on. Um, so what is there to say you think about Hannah and Marnie's relationship at this point?
I think that they are, I mean, they're best friends, but they're
Mhm,
only best friends because you can tell they're best friends
mhm,
because of the possessiveness Marnie has over her and the
mhm.
judgmentalness. You know how some friends are just very possessive and judgmental?
I think that's a pretty common dynamic in I hate to say girl, women or girl friendships. I think that is common, and I don't get to see it explored enough because I've been in relationships like that with people. I mean, you and I don't have relationships like that, but we're also fully grown adults. I don't think
Mhm.
I could be in a relationship with somebody like that again, but I've had friendships that did have that, you know, possessiveness or that sort of like bordering on obsession with each other. I've certainly had
Mhm.
that in my life, and I think a lot of women can relate to that. I would say that they represent two archetypes at the very beginning, where Marnie is the one who's got everything together and Hannah's the mess.
Mhm.
And Marnie is the responsible one, and Hannah is the one who's late and can't hold down a job that she can pay
And
her
doesn't
rent.
have a good relationship and
Her relation she's dating this guy that Marnie
sh
doesn't approve of, or not dating,
and
just fucking this guy that Marnie
yeah,
doesn't approve
but
of.
you can tell she wants a relationship, but he just
Yeah.
wants to mess around.
I think that's what we're
From
meant
the
to think of the
first
first
episode.
episode, but
First
I
episode.
actually think there are some hints to the contrary. I'm not saying that Adam Sackler is fully conscious of wanting a relationship with Hannah in this first episode, but I think the seeds are there. And I'll
Mhm.
tell you why I think that when we get to them. In fact, is there anything else to say about Hannah and Marnie, or do you want to start talking about Adam and Hannah?
Let's start talking.
Let's
Well, we
talk about
totally
that
skipped over
scene.
Shoshana
Oh, right, right, right.
and
Jessa and
Jessa.
Shoshana. I don't think of them
There's
too
not much to
much.
say about
There's
that.
not they're I think they're meant they get not a lot in this episode, Shoshana especially. I think Shoshana's mainly there for comedic relief. We get more of her later. I do really like Shoshana as a character. I think it's
Mhm.
interesting that she gets to be the one who tries to compare them to Sex and the City, which is something the show is compared to a lot. And
Mhm.
I like Shoshana. I thought her scenes were funny. I do want to talk more about Jessa, but I think I want to talk more about her when we talk like maybe a little later, because
Mhm.
Jessa we get to know I think a lot better in the second later in the
Mhm.
show or later in this episode. I want to can we talk about Adam? I really want to talk about
Yeah,
Adam.
sure.
Okay, so Adam and Hannah. Um how so we've talked already about how we feel about Adam Sackler in this episode. But I think what I wanted to say is one of the things now, like observing him, having seen so many of his movies, I think one of the things that made him so like magnetic for me when I saw this show is that his choices as an actor are really unexpected. Like everything he does, the way he says things, the way
Mhm.
his body moves is like unlike anything I think I had ever seen before, and yet so specific. Like this
Mhm.
guy is really specific. I think one example I can think of is that when she shows up, and they're on the couch. I mean, a lot of the writing about him, the way he talks to her, that's all the writing of that character. But
Mhm.
what he does that's really interesting is do things like take her shoe off and then punches the shoe to
Mhm.
knock it to the ground. That is
Mhm.
weird and interesting and makes me sit up and take notice of him. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Yeah.
So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. I don't know, or anything else you wanted to talk about with Adam, or if you wanted to talk about their relationship, anything you wanted to say about this scene of them having sex on the very dirty couch. I imagine that couch is super dirty. That's what I think about every time I see his apartment. I'm like, ugh, this couch looks
I feel
dirty.
like what's so funny is, like I said, the first time I saw this, I was like, "Oh, this guy's awful," and this time
Mhm.
I'm like, I sympathize with him because Hannah is being like obnoxious. Like the stuff she's talking about is kind of self-absorbed, and she's not really checking in with him and how he feels,
Sure.
and
Well, he does
she's
try to put
just
it in her butt though. So I kind of
yeah,
feel like you gotta check in with somebody before you do that.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
that's fair.
But I'm talking specifically of the lines where she just continues to talk when they're
When
when they're
they're
having
having
sex,
sex, yeah.
just about something completely unrelated, and he's like, "I'm
Yes.
trying to focus," and like,
Yes.
just stop talk, like,
I
and I'm like,
know.
I totally like connect with him on that.
Yeah.
I'm just like,
Yeah.
Hannah, stop it,
Stop talking.
like she's
But I
being
feel like
obnoxious.
it's such a great way to show how insecure she is.
Mhm,
I feel like the talking is not even as so much about being self-absorbed, but more like she's like, I really like one of the very truthful things she says is, I really like you and I don't know where you disappear to. I think she's
mhm,
just really into this guy, and like she had a terrible day. She's having a terrible
mhm,
like couple of days. And the first
mhm,
thing that she does is go to see him because
mhm,
she knows she's going to feel better after she
mhm,
sees him. But she's not getting the relationship that she wants from him. He's
yeah,
not there for her whenever she needs him. So
yeah,
I feel
and
like
he responds, What do you mean? I'm right here."
exactly, which is like, come on,
But he's
dude.
emotionally not there.
Exactly. Like, but I feel like the talking during sex for her, when I watched it, I interpreted more as her anxiety. Like, I am anxious about being around this person, and he's hot and he's interesting and he's sexy, and I want him to be with me, but he doesn't seem to want to be with me. And I think her thoughts maybe start spiraling. And so that's where all this word vomit comes from, is just
Mhm.
like the anxiousness of feeling like you need to fill the silence with your voice, and which I
Yeah.
relate to because I do that all the time, not during sex
Mhm.
necessarily, but
Um, yeah, I just you get the real sense of her insecurity, but
hmm
also you get the sense that he is aware of her insecurity, but
hmm
he doesn't use it to hurt her, which is
no, he
what I saw
doesn't.
in this time, which
hmm
is, like, not something I saw the first time. I'm like, I didn't see
He
her
tries to
overwhelming
get her out of her own
insecurity.
head in a clumsy
Yeah.
way. Like
Yeah.
he is, kind of not fully like he's really just trying to have sex and is very
Yeah.
like, can you please stop talking?
Yeah.
But you're right. Uh he doesn't use it against her. He just tries in his own emotionally immature way. He tries to get her out of her own head by trying to get her focused back
Yeah.
on the task at
Yeah.
hand.
He's like, grab your legs or grab your feet. What does he
He
say?
said,
Like,
grab your feet, but take all that shit off.
yeah.
And I'm sorry, but I love comedies that are funny, but not, I love broad comedies. Don't get me wrong. Like I
Mhm.
love a broad comedy like Brooklyn Nine-Nine, but I also love a comedy where the comedy is much more grounded in reality and her like not able to get the tights off. That just
Mhm.
makes me laugh
And
every
him just
time.
like rip them
Him
off.
walking around and going, he's like, Jesus Christ. And he's like, starts pulling them off. That just makes me laugh every time.
Yeah.
Also, the weird way he bites her lip before they start kissing, like that, the
Yeah.
way that is weird and not sexy and sexy at the same time is so funny to me. Like it's just so
Yeah.
funny because when I think about what this character was probably meant to be on the page and how he took it in a different direction, it seemed
Mhm.
like Handsome Carpenter, you know?
Mhm.
Handsome Carpenter who has a dirty ass
Weirdo.
apartment. It's a Handsome Carpenter slash weirdo is like what we get.
Yeah.
And I love it. I don't know how much of that was on the page, but I just love it. Because
Yeah.
it's not like anything I've seen before.
Yeah. And
Um,
like, yeah. So I just feel like there's something, yes, there's something not quite sweet about him.
mhm.
But there's
He's
something
not
sexy about him.
he's not super gentle, but he
No.
is. He is and he
He
isn't.
is, he is in a weird way. Yeah.
It's so
Like,
hard to put a finger on, you know?
and like when he talks to her about her tattoos and how he's like,
Mhm.
why don't you get them? Like, you're not that fat now. You should get
Which
them
is so
removed, you
mean.
know?
Which is so mean, but he doesn't mean it to be mean. It's like
Yeah.
he lacks emotional maturity.
But I could tell her in her head, she's going, I'm not that fat now.
I know,
Like,
which is so
you
sad
know,
and
yeah.
relatable for me, to be
Yeah,
honest.
I know.
I want to talk about that scene. So also, I before we move on, I just the other part that makes me laugh every time is when she's like, "Will you use a condom?" And he goes, "I'll consider it."
I know, yeah.
That makes me laugh
I'll consider it. Yeah.
every time.
And then he
Um,
comes and she's like, are you putting on a condom? And he's like,
he's like
what does he
throwing
say?
the wrapper just behind the couch. I'm like, how many condom wrappers are behind that couch right now? It's so gross. But also, like, every man's apartment in their 20s, if they're alone, looks like that. I'm sorry. Like,
Mhm.
maybe some of you guys out there had male friends that had clean apartments, but every man in their 20s that I knew who lived by themselves or lived with other guys, their apartment looked disgusting like that, you know?
Mhm.
Anyway, I do want to talk about the scene where they're on the couch. Because this was a moment where I started to really see how if he's just a fuckboy, then why the shoulder kisses? That part where he leans over and starts kissing her shoulders, like I'm
Mhm.
like, that is something you do only if you actually care about somebody. Like if it was just because he's not, it doesn't seem like he's trying to initiate sex again. It seemed
Mhm.
like a really tender like gesture of affection. At least that's how I
Mhm.
interpreted it.
Yeah, the thing is that the thing that I learned from my first it was a friends with benefits relationship.
Mhm.
He would like kiss the top of my head
Mhm.
and like after
Mhm.
and like he showed me like old pictures from his childhood and talked
Mhm.
about like
Mhm.
so like I feel like don't be fooled by I don't know if you ever had a fuck boy in your life, but like
Um,
they can do all kinds of weird gamey shit.
sure,
Like
which I totally believe that. But I don't think he's playing a game. I don't think he's playing a game. I don't think he's the kind of guy that plays games. I think that he is I think that what I see in this character is somebody who doesn't really know how to deal with their emotions in a healthy way
mhm.
and so has chosen to keep everyone at arm's length.
Yeah. I think
That's
that
what I see.
he yeah, so basically with what I was saying, so I think that this particular character is
Mhm,
not playing games, but I'm
mhm.
just saying that shoulder
I
kisses
get it, I get
in
it.
other relationships don't necessarily mean anything.
Sure, but if in this character, between these 2 characters, it would be easy for him to say, "Well, I gotta head out, or I gotta make dinner,
Mhm.
or it was nice
Yeah.
seeing you," or whatever,
Yeah.
but he just they kinda linger, like, they're
Mhm.
and so I feel like, to me, these are the seeds of him falling in love with her, but not being aware of it, like, not being aware of it until he doesn't have her anymore. Like, I feel
Mhm.
like I feel like she is very openly into him, and I
Mhm.
think that he is into her but doesn't really realize how much,
Mhm.
or isn't able to communicate it, or isn't willing to, in fact, I can almost see him seeing a text from her and then not responding because he doesn't want to go down the path of
Mhm.
needing somebody. That's what it feels like to
Mhm.
me.
Yeah.
And I think there are other scenes where we get that. And I don't think he's at a point where he's ready to go, I want to have a relationship. Like, there are a lot of reasons. I think we don't know much about his family until we meet his sister, which that relationship is pretty fucked up. So I can only imagine that maybe he had other fucked up relationships with his parents. We don't know a lot about his parents. We know that he doesn't take money from his parents because he says that they're pieces of shit or something, right? He
Mhm.
gets money from
Yeah.
his grandmother, which everyone in the show gets money from someone.
Mhm.
Uh
They're in New
and
York, they're young.
and they're
Where else are they gonna
privileged. They're privileged.
get
Like,
it?
we have to
Yeah.
acknowledge that this is about a group of people that are privileged, because they
Mhm.
have people giving them a safety net that's giving them money. So he obviously doesn't have a relationship with his parents. We know that later. These are not things we know now, but we do know later that he is a recovering alcoholic. So I think there is something there in him that is not able or willing to have a deeper relationship with her, but we do see these indications that there's an affection there, is all I'm saying. Anyway. Um okay. I would like to talk about okay, do you want to talk about Jessa? Should we? I wrote
Not
down I wrote
really.
down Jessa is awesome and awful.
Awful, yeah. I really dislike this. I think Jess is my least
Mhm.
favorite character. I really hope the actress is, like, completely different. I have a feeling that she's not, though,
Well, who
but
knows?
there's
I mean,
something
Lena wrote this person. Lena made this person up. Like,
but she also based them on her real friendships, but, like,
yeah,
she
well, I
begged
wrote
Jessa to take that actress to take that
sure,
role.
Jemima.
Yeah.
I write characters for people that I know all the time. That doesn't mean that's who they are. Like, also, like, someone's perception of someone else is not, it's not fair to say that that's what she's like. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that's Lena's interpretation of a person that she's writing for
Mhm.
television and creating conflict on purpose. Now,
Yeah.
I think it's fair for you to dislike Jessa, and there are a lot of times where I really just cannot stand her. I feel like in this episode, what I like about that character is I'm like Hannah in that I have always felt like the sort of uh blander version of a couple of girlfriends. Like, if I am in a duo with somebody, the other person is the interesting, charismatic, beautiful one, and then I am also there. Do you know what I'm saying? So I remember having relationships, very deep friendships with women who were charismatic and interesting and troubled, and had like troubled pasts with their parents, or maybe they had problems with addiction that were undiagnosed and were behaving erratically. They were the life of the party because they needed that validation from others that they didn't get in their own lives with their families, right? And I don't want to
Mhm.
analyze people or anything, but I do feel like that's the backstory of this character. And so what I see in Jessa is a deeply insecure person who hasn't been loved enough by the people who should have loved her in her life, and so she has created this persona so that she can be this like, desirable, interesting person, and that's the thing that draws people to her. If just being herself and getting isn't enough to get loved, maybe being this mythological creature is the thing that I need to be. That's what I see in Jessa, and I feel like that's the part of me that sympathizes with her. I also think that I saw something this time that I didn't see before, and that is all the whole time people are asking her, "Where have you been? What have you been doing?" And she tells everybody different things and makes herself sound really interesting. And this is the first time I went, she's lying. She didn't do any of that stuff. I don't know how you feel about that.
I
Like she
forget what
tells
she said. Can you give me an
she
example?
well, like Shoshana asked her where she was, and she says, "Oh, well, I was in Bali, and then I was in this place, and I was shucking pearls with a, wise woman or something." And I was like, she didn't do any of that stuff. Maybe she did go to Bali, or maybe she went to Cleveland. But the thing is, I think Jessa creates a myth about Jessa.
Mm.
The biggest example I can think of is when she's at the dinner party, and Ray, she says, "Oh, I was nanny to these children, and their pacifist father, and they had like a singing group." And Ray goes, "Isn't that the plot to Sound of Music?" And that, I feel like that is an example of how I think Jessa is lying about where she's been. I think she was probably off with a guy. He got her, she thinks she's pregnant, right? We know later, we find out in a couple episodes she's not actually pregnant, but at this point, she thinks she's pregnant. She probably was with some guy. He got her pregnant. He didn't want her. Again, she's been rejected by somebody who doesn't want to stay with her. And she leaves, and now she's got to tell people where she's been, but she's got to make it a myth, and it can't be the truth. That's what I saw this time, which is something I didn't really notice before.
Hmm.
That's
That's
my
interesting.
backstory for
Yeah.
her.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's very interesting, and I think that maybe if she had been played by a different actress, I
Mhm.
would have seen that or would have empathized with
Mhm.
her. I just
I
feel
don't think
like
we're meant to
this
empathize with her all the time. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you. Please go.
well, I just feel like I would have liked to see those things. Like,
Mhm.
I would have liked that interpretation, but I feel like all I can see is just this vile person. Like, I
That's
really
fair.
maybe I just, like, don't like the actress or
That's
how she
fair.
portrays her,
That's
and I
fair.
feel like if she had been played by, like, some other
Mhm.
actress, I don't know who, but I would have looked past it and I would have tried to understand
Mhm.
her. I would have tried to see what was going on beneath the surface, but all I feel is just the reason I didn't want to talk about
Mhm.
Jessa, or not didn't want to talk about Jessa, but
Mhm.
didn't have anything to say about Jessa is because I literally like
Shut
was not
down
paying
when
attention.
she's
I just
yeah.
shut down when she's on screen.
Sure. And that's fair. That's fair. For you to have that reaction. I think the actress's choice to avoid making her sympathetic is a bold one that works for me. And I don't know if that's a conscious choice she made or if she's just playing something close to herself. I don't know. But I think that Jessa is, as a person, beautiful, charismatic. She's got that accent. And I think the actor has really good comedic timing. Like when she's talking to Hannah about like just be like Flaubert or like just tell your parents you're an artist, like all that stuff is really funny to me. The way that she talks is so pretentious and also like a scared little girl at the same time. Everything she says is a protective shell she puts around herself to avoid being hurt by other people. It's all an act. And it's very transparent to me. And I love that very few, I think there are moments where the actor does portray her in a way that is meant to get elicit sympathy from us. But most of the time she doesn't. And I think that's bold and truthful because a lot of people I've known who create a myth around themselves to protect themselves, they don't let that
They don't let anything penetrate.
they don't let those cracks show. They don't let anything through unless they are in such a bad state that they can't hold the wall up anymore. And I
Mhm.
think that's an interesting character. Even if I don't like Jessa, the person, very much most of the time, I find that to be an interesting part of the story. And I see how someone like that would be very attractive to Hannah and how Hannah would make a myth about that person. Because I think Hannah wants to be interesting and beautiful and charismatic and doesn't feel that she is those things. And so, and I understand that. I remember being friends with people like that and feeling like maybe you can catch a little bit of their light if you hang out with them enough. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So I guess that's all I wanted to say about that. Um, all right. Last thing I wanted to talk about is, so Hannah says to her parents, I think I might be the voice of a generation, or at least a voice of a
Voice of agent.
generation.
I loved that line the first time I heard it. Like, I was
Yes.
like, "Yes."
So is Lena Dunham the voice of a generation?
She's a voice of a
She's
generation,
a voice of that generation. Yes,
of
I
that
think.
generation,
I
the
think.
millennials.
I think that I think we have to acknowledge that this story is about a very specific group of people. It's not very diverse in terms of its casting, and that's something that we can continue to discuss. Uh, but it is about a specific group of women, a type of women, white privileged women in their 20s, living in New York City. So urban, living in an urban environment. Artists, I think people who are trying to be artists,
Mhm.
who have the privilege to think about those things, even if they don't really have a steady job. So it is about a specific type of people. Um, but it also is very specific to that generation and the things that they're worried about. There is something very specific about that millennial generation, and again, a specific population of them who had a lot of love from their parents or had at least financial support. Like, I don't think all these
Mhm.
characters have had a lot of love necessarily from their parents, but they had enough support that they could kind of flitz around and do whatever they wanted. They had the
Mhm.
safety net. They're struggling with self-sufficiency. There's I think being in your 20s is a time where you do struggle with your identity regardless of the generation you're in, and what your place is in the world. And so I think these women struggling with their economy and like, what does it mean in this world to be a woman with certain freedoms but also certain setbacks, maybe freedoms that my parents didn't have, like what does that mean sexually for me and in the workplace? Like, I think this is a very specific look at that life and that time period. And so to me, I would agree with that statement. Um but again, I would put say I would say as a caveat that it is not about every person of this generation, as no story could be and be specific. You know, if you look at Donald Glover's show Atlanta, which Donald Glover does guest star at a certain point on this show, Donald Glover is writing a show about a very specific uh, time period and a very specific group of people. And I think that that is what makes a show interesting to me, is specificity. Issa Rae wrote a show about a very specific group of people in a very specific time period, and that to me is good writing. And not everybody may want to live in this world, but it is, I think, an example of a certain group of people. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Um, okay. Anything else to say about the pilot of Girls?
I
So
don't
it
think
ends with
so.
Hannah stealing the housekeeper's tip,
Yep.
which is very
Which
typical Hannah behavior.
typical Hannah. Yep. Typical.
um yeah, I think that I look forward to continuing to watch this with you every other week. And I'll have to figure out like what would be the next episode that Adam's in. I think he's in the second episode, but yeah, it's good to revisit it. Again, I like being able to pick up on new things each time that I watch it. And it's really interesting to see Adam sort of the beginning of his journey and think about how this role shaped, I think, the way the public looks at him, really shaped his image, I think, in the public consciousness for a long time. And then I think Kylo Ren and Ben Solo came along and did and reshaped it. But at this
Mhm.
time period, that was the way we kind of saw him. All right. Are you ready for some moments of thirst? You
Sure.
got some moments of thirst this time?
Um, maybe.
Uh-huh.
Just like maybe just like him behind her, like
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
about to do
Mm.
stuff.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Um, Oddly, the biting the lip in a non
Mm-hmm.
like in a way that's like you said, it's both not sexy and
Mm-hmm.
sexy.
It's like it starts not sexy, but then it surprisingly turns sexy for me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I want to address
Um,
that for a second because I think Adam Driver in a scene where he's got to kiss somebody like that, like his complete commitment
mhm,
to that is, I don't think, a thing that every actor can do. And I
mhm,
think that's part of what makes him so sexy to me
mhm,
is that it's one thing to kiss somebody in a scene, it's another thing to fucking devour them. Like
mhm,
that's the way this character, I feel like that's the way this character kisses a lot of the time is just like devouring the person across
mhm,
from them. And I think that the commitment to that is astounding to me. Anyway.
mhm. Um, I think yeah, I also liked like we already said the line reading of "I'll consider it."
I'll consider it.
Just
Such a dick.
just love that. Yeah.
So okay, I've got a couple things here. One is just generally this shirtless. The shirtless, I love the objectification of this guy. Like they're like, we're objectifying the fuck out of this guy and we're just gonna do this. He's gonna be shirtless for like the first like 2/3 of this season. And
Mhm.
I am looking forward to more shirtless scenes. I just
That's true. Guys just like being shirtless,
he doesn't
around
seem
the
like he's
house.
wearing underwear. Like he's literally just wearing jeans, and he maybe he and that's it. Like maybe he was walking or
Mhm.
like he knew somebody was coming over, so he had to throw some pants on.
Mhm.
But and also like at this point, he had that like really solid body, but he wasn't like all bulked up for Star Wars yet.
Mm-mm.
So he still had, I
Mm-mm.
think, a body that looks like,
Had a bit of a belly.
well, he
Not a
had, it was,
belly, but just like it
his body was a
was
little softer. It was like a
softer.
body that you
Mhm.
would see on a man who works out in life and not as
Yeah.
much a movie star body.
Not a movie star,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I appreciate movie star body Adam, don't get me wrong, but I do like this a little bit softer, solid kind of body
Yeah.
he's got going on. I love the way he lumbers about. Like again, his body movement is just like, I'm like, ooh, so sexy. His gorgeous profile, that beautiful shot from behind the couch where they're looking at each other in profile and
Mhm.
you see like his nose. I'm just like, ugh. I just like anytime I get like an Adam profile of the nose, I just like it just makes me melt. I just love it. And then lastly, I would be remiss if I just did not mention the line that reverberates in my head every time I think about this character. And that is, you should never be anyone's fucking slave except for mine. And like there's something about the way he says that that
Yeah.
just I feel it in my pelvis, Sarah. Okay.
Yeah.
Like it's just like I think it is just like I I can't. I can't. I have no words. I have no words.
As you would imagine, I'm normally up for pretty much anything in the bedroom, but I can't tell if what happened was weird or sexy.
Oof. I'm all hot and bothered now. Are you ready? Are you ready for some trivia?
Mhm.
I can't wait.
I'm just gonna give you one because we need to save. We don't want to, like I
Yeah,
said
let's
before, we don't want to blow any load.
we don't want to
We don't want to
blow our
blow our
load is what
load.
you said. You go ahead and say it. Off air
Sorry.
you said we should only do one piece of trivia. We don't want to blow our load. And I was like, you're
That's
right.
true.
You're right.
Yes.
We don't want to
Okay.
blow our load.
Okay. Let's see. Um,
I'm excited.
so I'll do two. I'll do
Okay,
two
cool.
because
Cool,
like
cool, 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 cool.
one is not good enough.
Cool, cool,
But
cool, cool,
did
cool,
you
cool, cool.
know what Judd Apatow said about this show? Why
Mm-mm.
he did this show?
No.
Um,
Although it does definitely seem in his wheelhouse because it's got a similar
mhm.
sense of humor.
He said he hoped the show would provide men with an insight into realistic females.
Oh, I actually like that. because
Mhm.
we didn't talk about this too much, but one of the things I like about the show is that I just like seeing messy, complicated, unlikable women on screen. I want more of
Mhm.
that. And I want to see them fuck up and try to do better and then still fuck up and then have
Mhm.
moments of redemption, but also just be messy and unlikable. I like
Mhm.
that appeals to me. And I can see how that doesn't appeal to everybody, but it appeals to me.
Yeah.
Also, I feel like the sex on the show is some of the realest shit I've ever seen. And I don't mean like real as in you see everything. You do see a lot, but it just feels like it's not glamorized. It's like it feels
Mm-mm.
like even when this is feels like I'm what it kind of the awkwardness of
Mhm.
and the it's like sexy and awkward at the same time.
Mhm. Yeah.
It feels really raw to me, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah. So the only other piece of trivia I will give you today is
Mm.
that the character Shoshana.
Mm-hmm.
So she was not intended to be a recurring character. She
Oh.
was just intended to show up in this
This first
episode.
episode.
But Lena liked her take on it so much that she decided to make her the fourth girl.
I love that. I love that. And it feels like there should be four. Like it feels like, and also I think and we don't get a lot of Shoshana in this episode, but I think what Shoshana adds to that group is the girl who's really trying to be the cosmopolitan city girl, who's like really going for it. She's got the weird
She's the
outfits.
Charlotte.
She is the Charlotte of the group. But also, and I kind of hate Sex in the City. It's funny. People are like, there are people that are like, I hate girls. And I'm like, I respect that
I
because
don't like Sex in the City.
can't stand Sex in the City. I've seen all of it. Don't get me wrong.
I've seen all of it too.
every episode.
I watched it when I was 16.
I watched every episode. I was in college when I watched it. I did not see like I understand how people hate Hannah in the way that I hate Carrie and the way she treated Aiden. Like I get it.
Aiden, I'm so butthurt about
get
Aiden.
it. I'm so hurt about it. But so I get it, people. I really do. Anyway, I think Shoshana adds this. Shoshana's very quirky. The actor has a really interesting way of speaking. Again, like it's a really distinct person and just another take on what being a privileged white woman in New York, basically. And I can also understand how people are like, I don't want to watch a show about a bunch of privileged white women in New York. I get it.
The fact that there are two shows that do that. Two shows about 4 white women in New York and having sex. Like,
right, but how many shows are there about a bunch of white dudes doing something? You know what I'm saying? Like, that's why it doesn't bother me. I would like to see a world where we have room for lots of different stories.
Yeah.
And I feel like there's a very particular group that has been able to be the central characters for my entire lifetime. And I'm happy to see other people getting some center stage. That's all, you know? And I do think Sex in the City and Girls is very different. Sex in the City, I think, is very fairy tale to me. And Girls is like almost like the grungy cousin. You know what I mean? Like they're I don't think there's a lot of glamour in this show, nor is it meant to be glamorous. Anyway, thank you, Sarah. Thank you for that little bit of trivia.
Oh, you look awesome. Come the fuck upstairs.
Okay.
But wait, I have to warn you about something.
What?
If you come up here, I'm gonna tie you to my bed and keep you for at least 3 days. I'm just in that kind of mood.
Would you like to talk about what we're watching next week?
Sure.
So we don't need to spin the wheel. In fact, listeners, we won't be spinning the wheel for a while. I guess at some point we'll have to decide when we want to watch Chippendale. I guess maybe close to when it comes out. But in the meantime, we're kind of just watching Brooklyn Nine. We're bouncing between Jake Peralta and Adam Sackler. And I'm happy to be in this sandwich, let me tell you. I am happy to be the meat in the sandwich. I don't know about you. But we've got Peralta and Sackler, and that's what we're doing.
I'll be the fried egg.
Yeah. I don't know why that made me laugh so much. So the next 2 episodes of Brooklyn Nine-Nine that we'll be watching are full boil. So we're going full boil. So the synopsis is Jake tries to keep Charles away from going full boil on his new girlfriend. So we're going to see the girlfriend come back up. Meanwhile, Rosa and Amy are reluctant to help an amateur caped crime fighter, and Holt faces competition for the presidency of a police organization he found. founded. Sorry, not found. He founded it.
Mhm.
All right. And then the next one is, and these shows are contemporary, really. This came out in 2014. Girls is 2012. So they're kind of in the same couple of years there. The Apartment, we'll also be watching, and that is due to crippling debt, Jake faces losing his apartment and asks Gina for help. Rosa and Charles clash with one of the weekend officers, and Holt and Terry ask their officers to conduct self-evaluations. So that's what we'll be watching next. Sounds like, your typical mid-season antics on a show. So listeners, so that's episode 17 and 18 of a 22 episode season.
Okay.
All right. So listeners, that's what we'll be watching next week, or next time, I guess, when we see you in 2 weeks. Thanks for listening to the show. If you want to give us your thoughts on Girls or the pilot or anything that we talked about, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at Adam and Andy Podcast. And you can find us on Twitter at Adam Andy Pod. Sarah, I've enjoyed thoroughly talking to you about this show.
I have too.
And I'm glad that you and I have a mature, well-adjusted, emotionally healthy
Glad we don't have
girl
these types of
friendship
relationships. Yes.
But I sure will
We're
enjoy
adults.
watching. Yes, I sure will enjoy watching everyone implode over and over again on Girls. It's like a spectator sport.